kind of, there we go. Thank you. So thanks so much for coming, everyone, to our online Q&A accountability session with the Young Greens Executive Committee. It's really fantastic for you to come along because this is one of the few chances that you get along the year to be kind of in the room or on Zoom with the entire Executive Committee. This is your chance to ask them any questions you want about their role, what they've been doing along the year, anything that you think they should be doing differently. This is your chance to kind of bring that up with them and hear what they've got to say on it. So I hope you're excited and get thinking of some questions that you might want to ask later on. But now I'll hand over to Tom, the Young Greens co-chair, to talk you through what the Executive Committee have been doing over the past few months.
Thanks, Isaac. And hopefully, to avoid killing your excitement, I'll keep this quick. But it is quite long because we've got quite a lot done over the last few months. So I'll kick off straight away. So the kind of big event of February was hiring Daisy, who's on the call. It was our new 3-day-a-week Young Greens Administration Officer. And we're really, really super pumped to have her on board. She's been like organising materials to bring to 30 under 30, writing emails, getting in contact with local groups. So kind of really all round having a staff member has been like hugely valuable to us and massively increased the capacity of our team to deliver. And then kind of since that moment in February, despite Daisy's use, everything has gone a bit downhill because of the kind of disruptive and really, really sad effects of the pandemic. I don't need to remind you about that. We did have a plan for the locals elections, which were going to be in May, and it was really big. Mainly in the support of Young Green target candidates, we in the London and the South East regions together had planned 27 action days in every region of England. And we did even get as far as launching this on a mobilising call and get starting chatting to some of our amazing Young Green local election candidates before we had to cancel it all because of the pandemic. As part of that, we launched the Young Greens Network, which if you're a group or regions officer, you'll know. And it's not a replacement for the Senate, which some of you might know was abolished at convention this year and kind of brought all the groups together. But it has a similar aim of keeping EC in the regions in touch. It's not really yet kind of kicked off its full potential of keeping us in touch, which we were going to kind of launch it to during the local elections. But we're having useful conversations through it and kind of learning for it and hoping to launch that to all our groups as soon as possible. So the next thing we did was our constitutionally required autumn general meeting. You'll notice it wasn't autumn at the end of February or at the start of March when we launched it, but that was the result of a late convention and then an early general election, which kind of got in the way of our plans. It was called Resist Tory Rule, and hopefully lots of people who were there are on the call with us now. And we combined the accountability session that we have to run, where we had a short Q&A a bit like this, with a mobilising event aimed at educating our members and pushing our local elections work. It was in Manchester on the 1st of March, and we were really pleased how it went. We had 35 Young Greens attend, which was brilliant, especially as the North is a kind of area where we've like in the past been a bit smaller. And we kind of heard from them about the brilliant work that the North West Young Greens and Manchester Uni Young Greens are doing to build up our capacity there. We had a wide range of sessions. We had a speech from Amelia Womack, which was fantastic, and workshops on austerity and how to organise for a Green New Deal. And we had the accountability session as well, which was organised fantastically by our SPC co-chair Isaac Sell, who does so much, who's on this call. And I'm also very happy to report back that none of us got no confidence voted, which was pleasing. So after a year without it last year, we launched 30 under 30. For those of you who don't know, that's our kind of annual training scheme, where we take 30 kind of up and coming Young Greens and put them through an intensive training process. So this year we've done it slightly differently. We started off with a 3-day opening residential weekend in Birmingham, where we covered the basics of green politics, campaigning and elections. And then those 3 days were to be followed by 5 optional single-day events, which we're going to cover digital organising, press and media work, creative and visual campaigning, and go deeper into kind of training on elections and campaigns. And we also plan to do things slightly differently by opening those days up to not just people who are on 30 under 30, but by other Young Greens who could apply to those days individually as well. And each of them would have been open to about 40 Young Greens, including the 30 under 30 years. So we hoped we were going to reach about 100 Young Greens for that, like in total. But obviously, sadly, that didn't happen. So back to the 30 and the 30 scheme, we ended up with 230 applications to take part in that for only 30 places, which was obviously like really brilliant. And we were blown away by the kind of quality of the applications. We ended up doing 10-minute interviews for, or like whittling down that to 60 and having 10-minute interviews, and then still kind of like having to painstakingly cut them down to 30. And I think there were 7 of us on the kind of call to decide who got in that scheme, and it took about 6 hours, which was crazy, but just because the quality of candidates was so high. So obviously neither the training days or the local election plans were to be, and nor was the party spring conference, which we had a lot planned for, including a panel and the regular Young Greens meetup and all sorts. That was all obviously off. And so we kind of had to sit down and plan out the end of our term again. So the results being the programme of talks and trainings that's set to last us through lockdown. So far, we think over about 500 people have attended at least one of these calls. The talks follow from a narrative script, which we wrote at the start, designed to kind of like run a critique of the crisis of system, which has left us so vulnerable to a health crisis as well as the economic crisis that we're increasingly seeing hit young people. So the talks were themes based on that script, and we've had experts drawn from the Green Movement delivering each one. So far, we've had 12 talks, including Derek Wall, Sean Berry, Alex Phillips, and even the chairperson of the German Young Greens. And if you've been to them, you'll know they've been absolutely amazing. And if you missed them, you'll find them on our YouTube channel. And we've also run 4 training sessions that kind of replaced the training that we were going to run under 30 under 30, press and media, digital organising, elections and campaigns. Each of them obviously was on Zoom, 2 hours long, and they've kind of become increasingly interactive as lockdown kind of has gone on. We've learned how to use these training tools. And we've had up to 120 Young Greens on those training sessions, which is obviously brilliant because it means in one of those training sessions where we were going to bring 40 Young Greens together in real life, in like physical life, to take this training, we've had 120 online, and we've like trained as many Young Greens on that one session as we were going to do the whole year without the lockdown. So kind of moving towards the present, we're working through plans to run an online convention because it's pretty clear by now that even by August we're not going to be able to meet up physically, and we'll be reaching the end of our 1-year terms. So we've recently launched a democracy process and are starting to see candidates for the internal elections come through, and you can check out our website for details on how to get involved in that. Motion writing this year will be helped by our campaigns writing workshop that's being run by Katrina and Isaac this Saturday. And then we're hoping the convention will be held on the 15th and 16th of August. And we're looking forward to sharing more about the timetable once we've got that and speakers sorted out. Finally, we've started on plans for our the Green Party's internal elections for leadership and GPEX. So for leadership elections, we're holding 2 hustings, one each for deputy and leader, that will be open only to Young Greens, so you guys can get your questions in. And we're ready to launch those tomorrow. And we're also going to be in touch with GPEX candidates with 4 Young Green related questions and 1 biscuit related one, for obvious reasons, for written hustings, which will be excellent. And then finally, we're going to ask all the candidates for the House of Lords nomination process to send in a short video answering some questions about how they plan to represent young people in Parliament. So that's kind of all the big headline substantial stuff that we've been getting on with. But as well as this, the kind of core functions of the Young Greens that we will put in kind of so much work to fulfil carried on. So Rosie and I continue to attend Green Party executive and political committee meetings. And we are, I promise you, assertive voices for young people on both. Nanette and the team continue to work with FYEG. So recently, for example, we nominated candidates for co-option to their executive. And as I mentioned earlier, we've helped bring together London Young Greens and Munich Young Greens for an online webinar. And we continue to stay in touch with all our groups and societies through the Young Greens network. And we're hoping to start regular calls with the regional co-chairs as things begin to return to normal. Thank you. Back to Isaac.
Thanks so much, Tom, for going through all of that. And hopefully that kind of shows to you all of the fantastic work that the executive committee's been doing over the past few months. And hopefully there's also a few things in there that maybe you want to ask about or find out a bit more about. But for now, we'll get on to the pre-submitted questions, which have been submitted over on Action Network by some of you here and also by others who might not have been able to make it. So the first question is, what does the current membership stand at? And what is the change since last year in membership numbers?
I've got current, I can look up past, but you may have to give me a minute to maybe ask another question, and I'll come back with that.
Well, I can tell you current for now if you want. While Rosie's looking that up, but that's about 6,500. I only know that because I sent an email earlier and it came up. But yeah, I guess we can come back to Rosie on the last year's membership. But we've definitely been seeing people join.
Great, thank you. So, yep, about 6,000 at the moment, and we'll have 6,500 at the moment, and we'll have an answer just a bit later on how this has changed since last year. So I will ask all of the pre-submitted questions. So if you've submitted a couple and they seem to be separated, don't worry, they will all be asked. So the next question is, will the Young Greens executive be making any endorsements for the upcoming GPEX elections?
I can answer this because I'm heading up the GPEX election process. And we had a meeting where we talked about this stuff, and we decided that we wouldn't endorse candidates for a whole host of reasons. Number one, we can't use any party platforms to endorse them, so that means we can send out any emails like outlining the endorsements or even put it on our website. And number two, we thought it kind of wouldn't be very democratic to endorse candidates as the Young Greens, where we're kind of like an EC that like weren't elected on the platform of endorsing these candidates. And even if we did a kind of ballot of the membership, that would take a lot of resources and is unlikely to hit like a large amount of the Young Greens. So yeah, no, we won't be endorsing candidates.
Thank you for that response, Tom. So the next question is, can the Young Greens Executive Committee please reaffirm their position on trans rights and also on the Black Lives Matter movement?
I'm happy to do that on behalf of the Executive Committee as well. Yeah, we're in complete solidarity with the LGBTIQA Greens as they continue to struggle for trans rights, and we're in complete solidarity with the Greens of Colour as they struggle as part of the Black Lives movement as well. Black Lives Matter movement as well.
Thank you. And of course, as Structures and Procedures Committee as well, we want to do everything we can within the Young Greens to really foster a really inclusive environment at every point in all of our processes. So the next question is, how did you all first get involved with the Young Greens Executive Committee, and how old were you all?
I can take that one first, if that's all right with the others. How did I first get involved with the Executive Committee? Well, I did the 30 Under 30 training scheme in 2018, which was kind of my entry into Young Greens politics. I've been in the main party for a few years, but I hadn't really got involved with the Young Greens. So doing that training scheme in 2018, I was 19 at the time. And then last year, I felt like I was ready to kind of make the step. I knew what I was more interested in within the party. That was kind of the more press and media direction. That's kind of what I wanted to do. So I went, why not just go for it? Because I think everyone in this call, plenty of people in the Young Greens, in fact, everyone in the Young Greens has what it takes to be on this committee. So if you have something that interests you and you feel like you can contribute, then put yourselves forward.
Yeah. So I started getting involved in the Young Greens when I was 16 with a local action day with a South East Young Greens, Region 1 in Reading. Rosie was there, which is, I imagine, the thumbs up, which was brilliant. It's great fun, and just kind of got like ever so more like involved since then. It kind of spiraled to now where it's like my whole life in terms of free time.
I got involved rather out of the blue when Rosie messaged me asking if I would consider standing for the EC position, and that was after I'd met her. Actually, she very kindly came up to Norwich with Chris to help me in my campaign to get elected onto the city council, and it's been the most amazing year. I think I was 23 when I first ran for the EC, and I'm now coming on for 25. So it's been a long haul, but I don't regret it at all. It's been an amazing experience, and I'd really encourage you all to run if you think that it would be something you were interested in.
Yeah, I'll get it.
Spiraling for me was a good thing, so definitely run.
Yeah, I mean, I got involved with the Young Greens, same as Alex, the 30 Under 30 scheme in 2018, and that's how we first met, and it just sort of carried on from there. Really got really excited about everything that was going on, and as soon as the program had finished, I think I applied to get on EC pretty much straight afterwards. So yeah, and I would have been 26 when I did that, I think. I don't know anymore. How old am I now? I'm 28. 29 in a month, so I'm getting towards the end of my Young Greens life, so you probably won't see me in these calls for much longer. But I absolutely loved it. Definitely encourage more people to join. So yeah, get applying to be on EC, definitely.
Shall I go next?
Right. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, quickly. I was involved at university way back, an undergrad in Norwich, and in my in the society, and then got involved through my local party in Norwich, worked for them for a little bit, and then supported the South East Young Greens team for 2 years. I was on that team and then moved on to the exec nearly 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago, and I was 27 when I joined the exec, also reaching the end of my Young Green life too.
That was all of us.
Great, thank you.
I think
Katrina, did you
I haven't
speak?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
We're a very
one
inclusive
just as a
team.
thought is, I'm 29, so I'm very nearly not a Young Green anymore, so he thinks I don't exist. But I was also 29 when I joined DC. About a year and a bit ago, I, having just joined the Green Party, went to a London Young Greens AGM and ended up standing for the committee. And then about halfway through being on that committee, I was co-opted to join the Young Greens exec as well. And yeah, I was 29. So very much nearing the end of my term.
Great, thank you everyone.
Shall I
for...
that, or do you want to just?
Yeah, yes, yeah, go ahead as well.
Well, might as well. Everyone gets bingo. Yeah, so I first got involved in Young Greens at university, where I set up a student society and got quite involved in local campaigns there. Sort of, yeah, like dabbled with Southeast Young Greens stuff, but then got like more seriously involved when I moved to London. I got co-opted to the exec committee originally, so I just like answered an email call out for people to get involved after a few previous members had stepped down from the committee for various reasons. And yeah, it's been a massive like learning process, but a really good one in the months and years since I then stood for election again at the convention that followed, and I've been more heavily involved in the London Young Greens as well as one of their co-chairs. So yeah, it's been a lot, but it's been really, really good, and I don't regret a moment of it. You won't either, so please do get involved.
Great, thanks. And I think that actually is everyone this time. I'll have a list of all the names next time. But thanks everyone for giving all of those details. The next question is a bit more technical, but each month all of the executive committee write a monthly report on all their actions and what they've been doing in the party. And that's uploaded to the Young Greens members website each month, so that you always have a chance to see what they've been up to and what they are working on. So the question is, report submissions this year have been fairly low. Rebecca and Tyrone in particular have often rarely submitted reports. These are an important way for members to hold the executive committee to account and also understand what the roles are. Can you explain why your report submissions have been low? And can you also let us know what plans you have to increase the publicity of the reports, for example, on social media?
Well, I'll answer the first part of that question on behalf of myself anyway. Can't speak for Rebecca. Yeah, no, it's not been the best form to not get the reports in on time, and it's definitely not been good for accountability either. But I'd like to offer a very valid excuse, but I probably don't have the best one. It's just been this term, especially compared to the previous term I was on EC, I've juggled with a lot of different things, including my job, which I've just started the new career and stuff. But again, still no excuse, but it's just important to ensure that, I guess, if you are going to run for the position, you have all the time to be able to, give all your attention to it and do all the things that are required. But I have written all the monthly reports very belatedly, so people can take a look at what I have been up to, and I think they will be or have been uploaded. So there are reports going back to this time last year. So yeah, please do have a look. But yeah, I can only apologise for not being on sooner. It's a very valid criticism, and if anyone joins for the next term on here, yeah, it's a good thing to remember to do. Otherwise, you'll find these awkward situations where you're getting asked these kind of questions.
Thank you. And on the second point of promotion of the reports, someone to talk about kind of social media or something would be great. So maybe another aspect of getting these reports out to members.
I guess, yeah, that's definitely something to be promoted. I mean, I guess in a way that's kind of like an SBC thing to do, but SBC obviously have been fairly low on capacity this year, kind of running with one co-chair most of the time. Like Isaac, who's doing a brilliant job, but there's only so much you can do as one person. But definitely happy to kind of step in and offer to do more sharing of the reports and stuff. It's quite hard because they go on the Green Party members website, and if any of you have been on the Green Party members website, you'll know it's like absolutely rubbish, and it's really hard to access. So you have to know that you need to go into the Young Green spaces. So we could definitely do more promoting that, and maybe link to it from our website or something. And I don't know if, Isaac, you had.
Yeah, thanks for that. That sounds good. And I think that next year we'll be able to make sure that all of the reports and all of the kind of accountability sessions are really pushed to all of the members, so that you can find out what's going on with the Young Greens leadership team all throughout the year, whether that be right at the start of the term or now when we're approaching convention, so that you can be a part of that process all the way along. That's what we'd really like to see. So the last submitted question is as follows. It's that the work of the executive committee is fantastic and deserves to be applauded, especially now with social distancing. But how are local groups and societies being supported to deliver their aims, especially during the coronavirus? And also on this point, what are the plans going forward on supporting these groups and helping them to sustain their growth?
Come in if you like a little bit. Yeah, like Rebecca isn't here tonight, unfortunately, but she's our Groups and Societies Officer, who has been leading on this work in general. But as Tom mentioned before, having Daisy come in recently has just been such a godsend, because we previously, last year, really struggled to support groups, and it was just endless struggling with the general admin inbox without a staff member, and so many people to support whilst we're trying to run projects of our own. But since then, we've made some really good steps, I think, but there's obviously still loads more to do. So Daisy's been able to do phone rounds and actually have conversations and chat and just work out where people are. So there's been a kind of mapping exercise, I guess. Also trying to follow up on and messaging strange Facebook accounts and find out who's still active and who's left for uni, for example. And then, as Tom mentioned, like the Slack network has really brought in an awful lot of groups into like regular conversation with us, which is a Slack account basically, which we've given people access to different channels. So hopefully that will help groups communicate with each other, which I don't think was ever happening before, apart from through the main Facebook group, and that was quite low. So really excited about that, and I think that we've got some new regions pumping and doing amazing stuff this year, which we've been supporting by trying to get regular calls with as well. I think we could still do that, but yeah, Tom and I are hoping to have like monthly calls, and we started them, didn't we, with the regions just before coronavirus set in. But yeah, that's probably it, as well as I guess like working with them on our local election strategies as well with the regions has been really important. We should do more.
I guess it's worth mentioning as well as that we've, or mainly Daisy, but we started the work to give local regions, local groups and regions access to Action Network, which is the new kind of not database software, but kind of like activist management software that the Green Party are rolling out, and that means for the first time ever, like we as Young Greens are able to give groups access to send emails to their members, or to run petitions, or if you came here tonight, you would have signed up on an Action Network form. So we kind of started trialing that at the end of last year for the general election. We found it brilliant. So we're running out to the groups, and the process is starting now. I think we're trialing it with 3 groups to see how they can use it. And yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah,
it's been a game changer. Thank you so much, Daisy.
Great, thank you. And I hope that answers that question. Now we'll just go back to the first one on membership numbers to hear the changes since last year.
Yeah, so I've got, because Civi doesn't allow you to do it quite as you would hope, which is the old database system that's rubbish. But basically what I have found is that when we started, so like September last year, we were on 6,400 roughly. So it's difficult to know what, it hasn't shot up, but it's always good to keep retain in any case, I think. But then the interesting piece of information is that the big surge that we had, which we're now kind of like been running off the energy of, is between May and July of 2019, there were 2,000 joined in that period. So it was huge. And I guess we might start to see some like flow off. So that was off the back of the European elections and the locals.
Yeah, I guess it's worth noting that the party as a whole will start seeing a membership drop off soon as well, because lots of people signed up on the energy of the local elections and the Euros and that, and they're kind of like not really their membership, or they won't have done it on a direct debit, and kind of start naturally dropping off, which is a pain. As well as during like the coronavirus, people just don't have the money.
There's also been a bit of an uptake in general membership though in the last couple of months, I think, since Labour leadership changed, and that's having a bit of an impact on us. So that remains to be seen, the long-term effects, but hopefully there'll be some good signs there too.
And younger activists getting involved, or new members joining from the school strike movement as well, which is amazing.
Great, thank you. So now we'll go to questions asked by all of you here now. So if you've got something you'd like to ask, just type it in chat. You can do it on the chat to everyone, or to me on private chat, whichever you prefer. I've already got a couple that have been submitted, so I'll get straight onto them. But if there's anything you want to ask, or anything you feel like hasn't been fully answered, then just put that in as a message, and that will be great, and we'll answer them to the best we can. So the first one is, why have there not been any campaigns or awareness about the educational inequality that's arisen through lockdown and online learning? For example, families may only have one computer, no computers, or limited Wi-Fi.
Am I unmuted? Yeah.
I
guess I can.
Yeah, you go for it. Yes.
Yeah, I can start there and then hand over to Tyrone for a bit. But I guess this is a fair point, and this is like something we've thought about running through the lot of it. I think kind of more like a general like co-chair, like managerial point maybe is that at the start of the coronavirus, we were quite low on capacity because a lot of people had a lot of things going on to do with the coronavirus. And that's meant, like me included, I struggled to get involved in like the first couple of weeks after I finished uni. And I guess that means we've not had so much capacity to run campaigns. I would also say we were on the verge of going through the Green Party to do a press release on some policy solutions to this sort of thing. So I wrote a briefing paper, and we were working with head office on doing that with Russell and head office, and then the NUS launched their campaign on it. So we decided that it was better, rather than to kind of make it a partisan thing and go through us, that we'd leave the NUS to do it. But we also have done some things about this. For example, we had Ross Greer give us a talk, which focused like to quite a large degree on educational inequality. So it wasn't a campaign, of course, but we have been looking to make sure that we address things like educational inequality through the crisis. And Tyrone.
I mean, that was a pretty perfect answer, really. What I was going to say was, yeah, I mean, the capacity issue to run a full-blown campaign on something is sometimes just a bit more of a task than it can often seem initially. So digital exclusion for schooling and for all sorts of different things is a massive issue, both before coronavirus, but it's just been exacerbated by coronavirus. You know, like doing the working in housing campaigns that I do as well. It's something that comes up all the time, especially in regards to children's schooling and people access to laptops and all sorts. But like I say, yeah, to run a full-blooded campaign on that, and to lead on that campaign as an organisation would take, you know, a good campaigns plan, people who are able to dedicate to run that campaign, and a planned out theory of change, which just has some basically levels of work and commitment that we just don't have that capacity. But we have been able to still talk about that campaign, like say Tom says, in the educational talks that we have, and still amplify it through social media. And maybe we can look at sharing a few more tweets from other campaigns around it, but it's just not feasible for us to lead that campaign ourselves.
I guess as well, I'd say, all that being said, credit to the Scottish Young Greens who like run a brilliant campaign on this. And I think campaigns similar to that is something we'd like to run in the future. And also come to our campaigns or motion writing workshop this Saturday, where you can be taught how to write a motion that sets up priorities for next year, and come and write something on that for sure.
I was just wondering if I could add something very briefly, and that's that like just in addition to the things that you cited, Tom, we also we were lucky enough to host NUS President, no longer sadly, but former now NUS President Zamzam Ibrahim, who spoke quite eloquently on the NUS campaigns for a cradle to grave national education service, or something similar. And so, I think, and that touched quite heavily on issues of digital exclusion and other forms of exclusion for primary and secondary age kids. So yeah, while we haven't been able to, and we haven't dedicated all our campaigns muscle to this, we have covered it, and our sort of reactive work during the crisis has linked that into the other issues we've addressed as well.
Great, thank you. The next question is, what work can we be doing to help encourage young Greens to vote in the upcoming GPEX elections? And just to clarify, GPEX is the Green Party executive, so they run the Green Party on a day-to-day basis.
Again, I'm happy to answer that because I'm leading on this thing, and absolutely, we know we need young Greens to vote. Because if we don't have young Greens voting, one, it leads to a really low turnout in the party, and two, it leads to people that young Greens probably wouldn't vote for ending up on the executive committee. And so we're really keen to make sure young Greens do vote in this election, and we're really going to be pushing it hard. We've started by launching a webpage on our website and pushing that on our comms channel that kind of gave information on how to stand and information on the different roles. As a bit of a more kind of accessible source of information than the Green Party guide on it, which is a bit more written, couched in constitutional language. So we've done that. We'll be running those 2 hustings that I mentioned earlier. We'll be pushing quite hard the GPEX written hustings that I talked about earlier, and we'll be pushing quite hard the House of Lords video hustings that I talked about earlier, to make sure that kind of young people's issues and young Greens issues are being addressed as well. And yeah, that's that on that. But we will be making sure that young people vote in this.
Great, thank you. And now another one involving everyone. So what or who is your biggest political inspiration? We'll start with Tom, and then I'll kind of go along everyone in order.
That's a really hard question. My biggest political inspiration, I mean, it's a bit obvious to say Caroline Lucas, who does brilliant work in Parliament on green issues, and she's a brilliant voice. It's also a bit cheesy to say something like the Young Greens membership, because they've got the exact right politics and they do so much work fighting for a fairer future. I'm not sure I've ever kind of thought of myself of having a single political hero. I guess so many people in this party and in this movement do so much work that it's quite hard to pick one out. So I'm going to say everyone.
Thank you. And yeah, Tyrone, if you could go next.
Hi, I was hoping I wouldn't have to go next because I don't have much better answer than Tom. I've been asked this question before, and I divvied for a very long time because it's difficult to come through an answer. Especially if you're looking pure politically, there's people in this party who inspire me, of course. But again, we don't be typical the answers that the people that we'd expect. We don't be typical by saying just people like Majid, but of course Majid is a massive inspiration. It's someone that I worked with before either of us were involved in the Green Party. And so it's been great to see, a fellow person of colour, from Sheffield, as I am. I know I used to be, I'm in London now, just go and absolutely smash it. So that's helped me think I can go and smash it as well now. So yeah, that's probably my answer.
Great, thank you. Rosie, do you want to go next? Quick fire.
I was asked this when I was being co-opted to be Young Greens co-chair on the Huff, and I just went for Adam Ramsey, so I'm going to go for him again because he's solid. Green Party member, Scottish Green. He started up Bright Green. He started UK Uncut. He started everything, and now he's Open Democracy Editor, and we had him come speak, and I think he's a hero. Yeah. Great,
thank you. And Alex?
Maybe I can go down the non-Green Party route a bit here, but for me, growing up as a gay man, there's a guy called Harvey Milk, who's one of the first openly gay elected officials in the US, and just growing up as a kid, that was a very inspirational story for me because I knew I loved politics and that I was gay, and that really helped to inspire me to get into politics. So it's not someone who necessarily all of his political positions are inspirational to me necessarily, but just that fight of being proud of who you are and not letting that get in the way of what you want to do in politics really resonated with me.
Great, thank you. And Matthew?
This is difficult. I suppose on the principle that the movement makes the leader and not the other way around, I'm going to go for a group like, so there are my progressive credentials. I'm gonna choose the Longshore Workers Union in the United States. It's quite a random one. They are now sadly relatively small, but I think from a political standpoint and for their like social movement organizing strategies, they're one of the most inspirational sort of like organising groups, but obviously trade unions around. They were also one of the first trade unions in a highly racialized American society to organise across racial boundaries, which was absolutely massive. Back in the 1930s when they started up, when they're responsible for really truly radical currents in particularly like West Coast US politics. Just most recently, I encourage you to look this up. They shut down 29 ports across the west coast of the United States on Juneteenth, the anniversary of the sort of I guess the announcement in Galveston, Texas, of the emancipation of chattel slaves in the United States. And like just that huge industrial muscle, but also the willingness to use it for social advancement, social movement issues is really inspirational. So yeah, do check them out and show them support.
Great, thank you. And Nanette?
Yeah, thanks. I did international development at university. One of my university lecturers talked ad nauseum about, Rosie knows what I mean because she did the exact same course as me, talked ad nauseum about the communist government of Kerala. I'm not quite a communist myself, but the government there has been able to raise literacy rates exponentially. It has a really high rate of economic growth. It dedicates 6% of its GDP to healthcare compared to India overall, who dedicates more like 1% of its GDP to healthcare. And you can see in the fact that they've only had 7 deaths as a result of COVID that's been a huge success, and the quality of life for people there has also been really high. So although it's not perhaps just one person, it's a group of people and a system of government that's made a really progressive change. And I'd love to see something like that influencing a lot of our politics here.
Great, thank you. And Katrina?
We might.
Yeah,
Katrina
I think
said,
she might have dropped out. She's been having some tech issues tonight. But yeah, so on to the next question then. Would kind of, if we could just have one main answer on this. So I'll go to Nanette as a councillor. Could you answer this one? What's one great Green Party policy that you don't think gets enough attention?
I'm going to be really biased again. I think that the fact that we want to spend 1% of GDP on international development is really, really important. I know I sound a bit like a broken record, but I think that spending money on international development can have such a trickle-down effect on allowing us to be able to spend less money on our armed forces, less money on our defence systems, that it's a really good idea. And I'd love to see more parties across the board thinking carefully about how they can rise to the challenge of doing more development work which is sustainable and climate and social justice orientated across the world.
Great, thank you. That sounds like a really important thing to bring more of a spotlight onto. And Alex, would you also be able to answer that question as well? What's one policy you don't think gets enough attention?
Oh, I was going to ask what the question was again, because I was looking at the comment section when you read it out. What policy do I think doesn't get enough attention? Okay, I'm going to be the annoying preachy vegan here. But I'm quite keen on our policies on reducing meat consumption and pushing towards plant-based diets where possible, because I think that animal rights is a particular movement that doesn't get enough light a lot of the time, and I'm really proud of us as a party that we do have that on our agenda a lot of the time.
Great, thank you. And I hope that's giving you a bit of a taste for that on that question. And on to the next one. Maybe Tom and Rosie to answer this one. On average, how long do you spend in your roles? Has this increased during the pandemic? And is there a struggle to juggle a job or uni and your positions?
I'm going to go first because Rosie's probably going to show me up on this. But I reckon in a normal week, I probably spend 4 or 5 hours in Young Green stuff. And then like that's the baseline. And then the rest of it is hugely variable depending on like what calls I've got in a week. So if I've got like a GPEX and an exec, a Young Greens exec meeting in a week, that will be like another 5 or 6 hours on top of that. But so I say the average week is probably looking about 6 or 7 hours, maybe a bit more. like mainly it's like just about the level that you can cover by doing an hour's or so work every evening, or for that sort of thing, and a call or two.
Yeah, I would echo Tom. Like, it's exactly the same. Probably that's the baseline. But like, the good thing is between two co-chairs is that we can often say, "I'm off for a week. I've got exams. Good luck," and we can sort of like work the work between us. Also, ever since having Daisy, I've been working a lot less than I did last year. So it's been incredible to have her support just on the admin side in particular. It was an awful lot of work. But one thing I would say on this is that like, I think though there's a lot of space for pushing to get some of these roles paid, because like ideally, right, we could have co-chairs or an executive in the future that is able to do so much more public facing stuff and be like a really loud voice for young people, do much more media stuff, try and get out and push like our messages much further. So yeah, I'd be like for that in the future, so, and also make it much more accessible. But it's a long way from where we're at the moment, but maybe something we should keep in mind as a movement, because that's how the Young Labour have a full like paid exec, for example, so it's worth thinking about.
Great, thank you. And just to add to that as well, all of the roles on the Executive Committee and the Structures and Procedures Committee, you're on there for 1 year, between one convention to the next as well. And if you haven't seen already, all our democracy announcements for convention have been going out. So if you're listening tonight and think that you'd really like to get involved, then check your email, check the Young Greens website, and you can see all of the information on our internal elections, or maybe you want to put a motion forward. We have lots of stuff on our website about this now, so that you can really get involved with our Young Greens democracy. So the next question, how do you as a whole aim to increase awareness of the Young Greens across regions that have next to no members?
I jump in on the regional development work. Yeah, so I guess, so for this executive committee, as since we're sort of coming to the end of our year now, it would be like about us. I guess I can talk about how we've sort of done this, so like tried to work on this in this year, and maybe some ideas that we could recommend for the future exec, depending on who is re-elected or elected new. But yeah, I think that generally regional like organising has been really important. And before, we used to, like 2 years ago, the way which this was coordinated was mostly via having committees that would we'd constant, or like I wasn't on this team then, but like 2 years ago I remember like receiving so many emails that were like, join this committee, join this committee, join this committee, like all the different regional committees, that then people weren't sure what it was about, and then it sort of lost energy, and then we were constantly electing committees for the sake of committees but not really organising. So what we've sort of done through the fact that convention like crushed the kind of organisational structure that used to keep those committees in place, the Senate, we have like been able to make it a lot looser now. So the regional organising in the Northwest, like we didn't have like an awful lot of like active members in the Northwest before this last year, and so when we did find people, we asked them whether they wanted to start a regional committee to be able to do kind of outreach work within the region, and they were like, oh well, I'm kind of running my own local group and I'm kind of running my own local group, but it would be great to connect. So what we did instead was just bring those core activists into a space, i.e. Slack, in a Slack channel, and have just allowed them to kind of do it much more organically and start organising events together which are trying to pull in new people. And we also ran our our like other national event, the All Gathering, that ended up being in February because of the general election. The Resist Tory Rule event went to Manchester because we'd been wanting to build up in those areas. So I think in part it's about trying to find the right people and how they want to work, and then supporting them to do that organising. And the other part is the exec running and spending a lot of energy on certain areas by, for example, running a national event in that region and then supporting those people to get energy up. So that's what I'd recommend for the future. It's been working well so far, but it's bit by bit for sure. We can't take on all the regions at once. We've had to like slowly build up.
I guess kind of like two kind of case study things on that as well. One is that I think like our election campaigns work really well in like meeting people who want to start up the regional things, and it's really a shame that we didn't have the local election campaigns, because as I said, we would have gone to every region and had multiple action days there. So I was kind of hoping that we'd meet people there who are like keen young green activists who are ready to start up. But for example, in the general election, when we went to Bristol, and we met the brilliant people at Bristol Greenstock who are very good, And then a couple of them there expressed interest in like bringing back the Southwest Young Greens, and that was only only a thing that happened because we'd gone there and we were like happened to be in the same room as them because we were doing like a action day with them. And obviously like the Southwest Young Greens haven't yet started again because of the coronavirus and because of the lockdown, and because they didn't have local elections there. But that could be something that's really big. And number two is that I think the Midlands Committee is something that is kind of like starting to kick off again and starting to get going again. And the reason for that is that we've been able to have Daisy, who's been able to coordinate calls between organisers there, and kind of start the work on getting that going. So I guess those two things, one, having the staff number is really helpful, and two, being able to do election action days where we can go out into the regions where there aren't actually many like active Young Greens, and then find them and locate them ourselves, and kind of turn them into like regional activists. Two things that can really help.
Can I jump in there as well? Because this is slightly different, not entirely about the region as a whole, but we've also done something on having a speakers network. And so we've got various people from different regions across the country who we're able to put forward if the media come to me or us to ask for Young Green speakers. So rather than building up a whole group, it has helped to kind of boost the profile of Young Greens in the area and say, yes, we do have really talented people in every region in the entire country. And especially in the kind of the build up to the general election last summer, we had a lot of requests all across the country. It's been a bit slower since coronavirus took over, but that has been really helpful as well, just for raising our profile and raising the profile of Young Greens in particular regions across the country too. So that's just a bit of a side thing, but hopefully is relevant for the...
Great, thank you. So the next one's on kind of newsletters and press. And the question is, how are we doing in Young Greens newsletter distribution to households and local stores as an alternative media source from the mainstream newsstands?
That would be cool. This sounds like the Labour leadership thing where they had, I can't remember who it was, but somebody was saying that they should bring back like printed papers from the Labour Party and distribute them free instead of the Metro on the tube. I don't think that's something like that we have the resources in terms of like capacity or money to do yet, maybe. But we do try and keep our members updated through the email lists. And since we've got Action Network as well, we've been adding on to people to those email lists who sign up for events. For example, or like the coronavirus has actually been quite helpful in this because it's meant we run those online events, which meant we've had a lot of people who are young people but aren't members sign up for them and join our lists, and then we can keep them updated that way. So no physical newsletters yet or in shops, but definitely on email. And definitely on Action Network.
Great, thank you. And the next question is, the EC have already mentioned some past issues in regards to the differences in membership and activity across the different regions of England and Wales. What has been done or has been planned to try and ensure sustained, active Young Greens presence in regions with less activity, especially in the north, but also generally outside of London and the southeast?
I guess this is like a similar question to the one we've just done, but again, if I can plug Daisy here, who is very great. She's been able to start like having regular calls with societies and groups like all over the country, which is like a key part of getting them going. But we definitely do need to start shoring up our kind of like activist base in the north and in the west, and like I'm guilty of being from the southeast. I'm not guilty, but I am from the southeast. And so a lot of our LEC, and it's definitely a priority of ours to make sure that we are reaching out. As Rosie talked about earlier.
I think, yeah, just to add, like we have done an awful lot of work in the northwest and in Yorkshire and Humber this year, which has been amazing, and we have just started up the Wales group. So there has been an awful lot of progress in this last year, but I recognise like what we haven't done is actively organise in the east or in the northeast. Perhaps like in terms of regionally, maybe just focusing on groups that we have in those places. Probably the least work we've done is in the northeast, but I would say, and yeah, there's a lot of work to be done there. Mostly a lot of this work has been led by people coming to us saying they want to get organised, and then we've done everything we can to make that happen rather than like trying to tackle them all at once. As I said earlier, it's like quite a big task.
I guess in some way it's a like National Green Party thing as well, that as a party we need to start touching the north more, and we need to start like focusing our target twin resources there, and start like building an activist base of all ages there as well.
Great, thank you.
Just posted that he's come in the northeast. Yes, we know we've got you, Edward, and we're so glad. Let's catch up. Let's just coordinate, because we probably, you're the one to contact, aren't you, at the moment?
Yeah, so hopefully we'll have lots more going on up in the north and carrying on what work's already been going on to work on that. So the next question is that there are many young Labour members who have recently left since the arrival of Keir Starmer, and they're looking for a left or environmentally centric party but aren't feeling comfortable or enthusiastic about joining the Greens. Do you think that we need to rethink our communication strategy and core messaging?
I think certainly since the pandemic started, we've been focusing on using the language that I'd imagine would appeal to those sort of people, and we're definitely focusing on like couching our communications in terms of justice and in terms of fighting for a better and greener and fairer future. But I can't say what they'd want. I mean, it's interesting how we as a Green Party should be recruiting the sort of activists who've kind of left Labour since Starmer joined, because a lot of them probably hold similar like policy positions and similar values to us, and they are people we would want on board and want fighting with us. And a lot of them are probably people who were in the Greens before but left because Corbyn joined, because Corbyn became leader. Like the Young Greens was a lot bigger before Corbyn became leader, and hopefully we can start to get some of those members back now he's not. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I was just gonna, Tom's answer was great, but the only other thing is I think that by comparison, certainly with certain other like party media channels, like not to put too fine a point on it, I think our comms, particularly over the last few months, has been much closer to what the Green Party's comms have to be in the very, very immediate term, to start seeing any of that membership transfer come back over. I think the important thing to bear in mind when you think about, when you try and stand in the shoes of a youngish Labour member who's pissed off at Keir Starmer, is that they'll also be equally pissed off at some of the things that the Green Party has done over the past few months. And I think if we do decide that it's a strategic priority to occupy some of that ground, or potentially not occupy that ground, but build a movement that will include those people who are leaving the Labour Party right now, I think the party as a much wider group needs to think quite seriously about what it wants its coalition to look like. I think for our part, we're doing that quite well, and we continue to work with the head office and with the Green Party leadership team on the whole, to try and try and get more of that and make sure that the Green Party's messaging is right on that, in that sense.
I think those are really true words from Matthew. And I guess I'd note that as the Young Greens, we do some work in trying to push the party to kind of move towards the sort of coalition that we as Young Greens want to see.
Great, thank you for that. The next question is, how do you feel you have dealt with rifts between the Young Greens and the party at large on matters of policy or procedure? Has it been difficult to assert the value of the Young Greens in these cases? So open to anyone there, really.
Want me to try, Tom?
Go on. You're the best at this.
I started with policy, I suppose. So the Young Greens, the way that we're set up as sort of a kind of semi-autonomous group, we can build on the policy of the Green Party through submitting motions to our convention that will be here in August, and you can start doing that now and join the session on Saturday to find out how. And so that's ways in which we can build on it, but we can't contradict it. But we have been organising around key debates at conferences, maybe not. We have been organising around motions at conference as well, specifically supporting or rather trying to push down anti-trans motions, for example. So we've been organising and mobilising our members to try and strengthen policies in areas that we think are most important or we see at risk, and also trying to shape the debate generally in our Matthew. That we've been drafting our own narratives. We're thinking about what messages make most sense and what we need to be speaking out on specifically, and pushing the party to do some of that within process and organisationally. Like Tom and I sit on the like GPEX, the Green Party Executive Board, and also more recently the Political Committee, which is the board or like deals with day-to-day issues and the running of the organisation, running of the party, and the Political Committee deals with day-to-day quick political response. Sadly, but we've kind of raised it and raised frustration at that. But I've been since engaged communications, and we attend those meetings. On the Green Party Executive Board, Tom and I work really hard to be with probably sometimes some of the loudest voices, maybe not always heard. Push very hard on the things that we think matter, and yeah, feel like we do it's relevant and makes sense. Is we consult the team. Sometimes when we see something that we think is bizarre, like most recently, perhaps for example, some people may have also agreed with this, but we saw the Green Party post out activity on chocolate meditation as a response. Comms, or a number of us did. So before I spoke to the Green Party executive, I asked the rest of our executive board and said, look, we think this is not really the kind of activity we should be pushing and promoting at a time like this. So it just wasn't quite the right political message. So there's kind of ways in which we deal, and that got taken down immediately after we posted. So some things do come through.
Great, thank you for talking us through that. Rosie, and you might have heard her breaking up a bit of points, but hopefully you got from that the Young Greens leadership will kind of stand up for the Young Greens membership within the whole Green Party at large. And I think we've got one last question that's been submitted before wrapping up, and that is, how do we find our fellow local region members?
I guess that is a question that depends which region you're in. But there is a groups page on our website, which you can go to and find if there's any local groups or regions in your area. And you can also drop one of us an email. Our email address is, if you go on the younggreens.org.uk/people, you can click on our names, drop me or Rosie or Daisy an email, and we'll be more than happy to help you link up with or Daisy can help link up with local Young Greens.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that sounds really good. And of course, just keep an eye out as well for things going on in your local area, and get involved if you want to be a part of your local party or even at a regional level. So thank you everyone for coming tonight. We hope that you've enjoyed the Q&A, having the chance to ask the Executive Committee any questions you may have. It's a really important chance that they're here to listen to your views, and we're all voted in by the membership, so it's a really important opportunity where you have your chance to hold us to account. As we've mentioned already, our convention is coming up in the middle of August, and we have a few other events happening before this as part of our internal democracy. The next one of those will be this Saturday on in the morning. Rosie, would you like to give a few more details about what we'll have going on Saturday?
In the chat.
Rosie, you're cutting out quite a lot.
Yeah, Rosie's got in the chat, but
I can see feedback on it.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Tyrone.
I mean, it's just been popped in the chat anyway, but there'll be a workshop this Saturday on sort of campaign priorities and policy motion writing. It's a really good opportunity to understand how motions are written in the Young Greens, ready for our convention in a month's time. So definitely would encourage you to come along. It's only going to be an hour or so long, maybe an hour and a half. There'll be many of us from EC on there as well. I'll be on there too. I believe Katrina will be leading it. But we'll speak about some motions that we've already got and how to sort of propose motions, make amendments, and how to really engage with the democratic process. So hopefully, once you sort of engage with the Young Greens democratic process, it makes it much easier to engage with the Green Party process, because I know it can sometimes be a bit daunting. So it's a nice way to sort of ease into it before we start to make some real changes and radicalise this Green Party. So yeah, that's the start really.
Great, thank you. And hopefully that just shows you that we've got lots of really exciting events coming up over the next couple of months. So keep checking your inbox, and if you're on the network Slack, keep your eyes out for all of the really great opportunities that we've got coming up. And with that, thanks so much. Tom's just put a link in the chat. If you want to have a look at our internal elections, we'd encourage all of you to have a look at that. And maybe stand in those elections too.
And I would say before,
thank you so much for coming, everyone. Oh yeah. Do you want
I was going to say before we go,
to
offer up that if anybody is thinking and standing in internal elections, which you all should do, if you come along tonight, you're definitely committed enough. Drop one of the current role holders an email, and again, younggreens.org.uk/people, or me or Rosie, and we can sort you out with some advice and talk through any questions you've got. We're very accessible.
Great, thank you. So yeah, we hope to see you at some of our events in the future, and we hope to see you in our elections coming up too. So yeah, with that, finally, thank you for coming tonight, everyone, and we hope to see you at our events again soon. So yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. Bye.
Thanks everyone.
Bye everyone, great evening.